Hello students, standard 8th. In physics we finished the revision of chapter number 11. That was the force and pressure. So I'm going to start the revision of chapter number 12, friction. So now when we drive a bicycle or any vehicle like car or a truck, then maybe you see that a driver is slowing down his vehicle, sometimes at the traffic signal or on the busy road, or there is a bump in the road. So in this situation, how he slows down the vehicle? Everybody knows that he will apply brakes. When you ride a bicycle also, the brakes are applied. There are two brakes in your vehicle, on your bicycle, for the front wheel and from the back wheel. So when you press the lever of the brake, then automatically your vehicle slows down. Or sometimes you also observe, like when a ball is sliding on the surface, then also it gradually slows down, and then after traveling some distance, that ball will stop itself. We are not applying any force, but it will slow down and it will stop after covering some distance. Also, maybe you have experienced when you step over a banana skin, what happens? You know that you slip down. Why? You know that banana skin is very sticky, slippery, smooth surface. Also sometimes if you step on a surface which is very smooth, like marbles, or if you try to walk on the surface on which the soap water is there, or some oil is dropped, and when you step on that oily surface, also you slip down. Now, what is the reason behind this phenomena? Why when we apply brakes, the vehicle slows down? Why the ball, when we not even applying any force, it slows down? Why we slip when we step over a banana skin, and so on? The answer of this all questions is the force which is occurring in all these situations, and that is known as friction or frictional force. So now what is actually this friction is? So for that we can understand with an activity. Suppose your book is lying on the table surface, and then you push it gently, then it will move a little and then it will stop. Similarly, if you move from other side, it will also move a little and then it will stop. Now, it means that when you apply the force on the book, and then what happens? There is some other force which is opposing that force you applying. And therefore, when you stop applying force, it stops moving also. Similarly, if you see that the force is in situation, you understand that force is always opposing the motion of the force that we apply. Now, it means that the force which opposes the relative motion between two surfaces in contact is called friction. So when two surfaces are in contact and there is a relative motion, means one of them or maybe both of them are moving on one another. And then in this situation, this force of friction is there. In the previous chapter also, we learned about that contact forces, in which also we saw that when two objects are in contact, then the frictional force also applied. And I told you that we will learn in detail in chapter number 12. So here, when the two objects are in contact and they are in relative motion, either one of them is moving or both of them are moving along each other's surfaces. In this situation, this force of friction is occurred. What is the reason behind producing this force of friction when the relative motion between two objects is there? It is because of the irregularities on the surfaces. If you feel the surfaces with your finger properly, then it is not like so, nothing is on there. You will observe that there is some irregularities, means some ups and downs are there everywhere. And therefore, when there is a relative motion between them, then what happens? These irregularities in both of them are interlocking like this. So when they are interlocking, what happens? The relative motion is getting opposed, and therefore the objects which are moving slows down. So that irregularities, as I told you, that are interlocking each other, and then the motion is opposed. Now that if you observe the spring balance is like a device which used to measuring the force acting on an object, in which there is a coiled spring inside, and at the end of it there is a hook, and on which if you put any object, then that spring goes down, and then you can find the magnitude of that force acting on that body. So now we will talk about this also now, but first we have to learn about the factors affecting friction. Means on which factors the force of friction is depending. First of all, friction depends on the nature of surfaces in contact. Means which type of surfaces are there. Some surfaces can give more friction. Its material, if it is made up of hard material or a soft material, etc. So not all the objects are giving the same force of friction. So it depends on the nature of the surfaces that are in contact. Second thing, friction is more between rough surfaces and less in smooth surfaces. To understand that, let us understand with an example. Take a ball, tennis ball or any ball that you get, then roll it on the outside road or on the very rough surface like the soil outside, which have lots of pebbles and stones and sand, etc. Then if you will measure the distance covered by it and note it down, then take the same ball and roll over a road which is like black, covered with that black things, so it will be little smoother than that rough surface. Apply the same force and measure the distance covered by that ball. Then come inside and roll that same ball on your tiles, and then again measure the distance covered, and after what it slows down and stops. And then again take a smooth surface like a marble or a glass surface and apply the same force every time, and every time measure the distance covered by that ball. You will see that, you will notice that every time the distance covered by the ball due to the same force applied will be different. What do you think? In which situation it will travel more, it will cover more distance, and in which it will cover the least difference? You will observe that the last surface that we used, like a glass or a marble surface, because it is very, very smooth. So on that distance, that surface, the ball will cover more distance. And then on the tiles, which is not that much smooth, so it will cover little less distance than the marble. Then on the road, still less distance. And last, on the rough surface, like kacha road, apne kahiye, kacho road hoy. In that situation, it will cover very, very less distance. So what can you get conclusion about it? You can say that friction is more between rough surfaces and less in smooth surfaces. And therefore it is not easy to walk on the wet surface. There is a chance to slip. Therefore, in beginning we talked about that when we step over a banana skin, there is a less force of friction and therefore we slip down there. Similarly, on the oily surface also, it is not easy to walk on it because there is less friction on it. Friction is independent of the area of contact. Means, doesn't matter that area of contact is bigger or smaller. The force of friction does not depend on it. And one thing that is here, friction depends on how hard the two surfaces press together. Let me explain you by an activity. Means I will explain you. Suppose you are trying to push a table which is not so heavy. It means by pushing it, you can easily move it. But now, tell somebody to stand on, sit on it. Maybe a healthy person. And then try to push that same table. In this situation, you will see that when the person is sitting on it, then the table, the legs of the table are pressed very hard on the surface. And in this situation, it is not easy to move that table. You will have to apply more force because there is more force of friction there. So when we apply the force, it must overcome that interlocking. Because if you apply the force such that this interlocking is overcome, and then it can go away. So when it's pressed harder, then that interlocking is also hard, and therefore it is not easy to move that object. So in this situation, all of the situation, you can say that the force of friction depends on these different situations, and therefore it is not always same in the every time. You can do something with the spring balance. Take a spring balance and put it on the table, and then take a brick, tie it with a rope, and the other end of the rope tie with the hook of the spring balance that is down. I hope everybody has seen that spring balance. So you can tie that here and then try to move that with the spring balance. Then note the force applied on the spring balance with the pointer on it. Then cover the brick with a piece of cloth. Then again do that same thing. And then cover a plastic on the brick, and then you try to move it. In this situation, you will see that when you wrap the brick in the plastic, the less friction will be there. So you have to apply less force to overcome that friction. So in this situation, you see that the different type of force of friction is occurring. In the next session we will revise about that some of our daily activities require the force of friction. Means without force of friction, these activities will not be possible. So here we are going to finish today's session, which will be followed by the question answers in the PDF file. And any problem, please write down in the comment section. Thank you very much.